We are here with Craig Aaron, the new CEO of Free Press. How long have you been having this role?
Well, it's brand new. I actually officially take over next week right after the conference, but we're sort of, I guess this is my debut in my new role. But I've been with Free Press for 7 years at this point, so I've been to a few of these, and I'm just sort of taking the big chair now, I guess.
Why do you do the work that you do?
I do the work that I do because I was trained as a journalist, care deeply about independent media and the free and open internet. And look, I think that if we don't fix the media, we're not going to move forward any issue that we care about. And I think it really does start with media. That's what got me interested in the first place, was being a journalist. Once I sort of switched over to the role of advocate, my eyes were open to a lot of other things that were wrong beyond just what was impacting journalists.
So last night's plenary discussion, I mean, while we were there listening to Nancy Pelosi talk about net neutrality and open networks, I received an email from Tim Carr actually talking about this new issue of, well, it's not a new issue, but talking about the newest thing to happen to net neutrality. Sure. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what happened, even while we were here in Boston, the House Republicans voted to throw out the FCC's net neutrality rules. And it's sort of a really strange situation because we actually opposed those rules because they weren't strong enough. We felt that they were watered down and wouldn't protect all internet users. But Congress is actually coming at it from the other side. They consider it some kind of massive overreach, and they've actually voted to undo those rules. But it's actually worse than that, because if this bill were to pass, the FCC would be completely unable to protect internet users at all. So even the limited protections that they offered in their rules, if this bill from the House were to pass the Senate, be signed by the President, all the protections would be gone altogether, and there would really be, at least in the short term, no way to get those back. Now, I'm optimistic that we can stop this bill in the Senate. I'm optimistic that if somehow that didn't happen, that we could get the president to veto it. But the fact that we've taken an issue, which is simply the free and open internet, this is not a partisan issue, or it shouldn't be one. Broad support across the political spectrum. All it's about is being able to go online, do whatever you want, go where you want, download whatever you want, and yet it's being framed in Washington, unfortunately, as a partisan issue or some kind of government takeover, when it couldn't be further from that.
And so, you know, the big thing that's happening right now that I think is probably catching the attention of people across the country is the potential of a government shutdown. I mean, yesterday at the plenary discussion here at the Free Press Conference, Bernie Sanders was supposed to be one of the keynotes, and he actually didn't join us. And so, can you talk about the relationship between a potential government shutdown and net neutrality?
Well, I think it's more of just a symptom of, you know, Washington not focusing on the issues that matter. I mean, certainly a government shutdown would leave, you know, would furlough a bunch of people at the Federal Communications Commission, others who would be theoretically on guard for violations of net neutrality. But, you know, it sort of goes to show, here we are, the government is on the verge of shutdown. You know, 800,000 people about to be put out of work, at least temporarily, were that to happen, and we'll see what happens next week. And yet, what is the House of Representatives doing? They're debating whether to gut, you know, bare bones limited protections on the free and open internet. That's all in the same day. So I guess for me, it suggests that those in Congress, there's a lot of grandstanding going on. There's not a lot of problem solving going on. And, you know, I think that's kind of all you need to know about what they're doing over there. Is it's all about, you know, these little sound bites and scoring these points, and I guess showing off for these big industries that they're hoping will support them down the road. Doesn't seem to have a whole lot to do with passing the policies that would actually benefit you know, the vast majority of Americans.
What kind of big industries to support them down the road are you referring to?
Sure, I'm referring to the phone and cable companies. You know, most people don't think about the media industry as one of our biggest lobbies in Washington, but they are. I mean, maybe the drug companies spend more, but that's it. Otherwise, they're right up there with big oil and everybody else among the companies that try to spend the most to influence the government. In fact, AT&T is the #1 campaign donor since they've been counting. You know, and they spend, of the biggest companies, they hire 500 lobbyists a year. They spend $100 million. That's just what they report. There's a lot more going on in terms of funding these fake grassroots AstroTurf groups. And other efforts to sort of undermine and smear real public interest advocates just to further this agenda. And where I think it starts to get scary is when we see policymakers playing right into that. I mean, there were a number of members of Congress when they were announcing, like I remember Mary Bono Mack, the congresswoman from California, was announcing her opposition to net neutrality via Twitter, which is sort of ironic. And then in there, she put the little @ reply to Verizon, like, hey, Verizon, just want to know that, want to make sure you see that I got this done for you. And that's the kind of thing we've seen happen time and time again, where we see the policymaking process, unfortunately, especially in the media realm, so corrupted by this undue influence. It's certainly not only true in media, but with the media, it's something that, maybe there's not as much attention to it as there are in other core issues about industry influence, and that's the way they'd like it to be. I mean, these guys run around town saying, oh, these are too complicated, you'd never understand these issues, just sign this letter, we'll tell you what the FCC should do, and that's the way media policy, unfortunately, has been made for decades in Washington, behind closed doors, without any public involvement or consent into what's happening. That's what this event's about, trying to reverse that, trying to change that, but obviously we have quite a bit of work to do.
So you've laid out what the issues are and where the problems are. What can people do? What should people know about it? I mean, Free Press is an organization that tries to bring people to action. Beyond sending an email, what can people do?
Sure. Well, so I want to defend the sending of the email a little bit, because I think that when those emails get in, that's what gets the attention of those staffers. That's what causes them to question what they're doing and maybe reach out to public interest advocates, find out why they shouldn't do one thing or another. So the last thing I'd want to do is discourage anybody from pointing and clicking, especially if that's what they have time to do. That said, there are more things you can do. Obviously going to see your members of Congress, especially when they're back home, very important. Writing and engaging with the FCC, incredibly important. They need to see your face. They're supposed to represent you. They see the lobbyists all the time on the 8th floor. So if you ever get a chance to either come to Washington or when they're coming through town, very important that they hear from real people.
What's the message that they should hear?
Oh, they should hear, you work for me. I think that's where I would start. And then, there's any number of issues that they'll take up. Protect the free and open internet. Let's have more competition. My bills are too high. All of those are messages they need to hear. They don't hear them, and they often are sort of living in a bubble where they get removed from the way these media issues affect people's lives. I think in addition to that, what people need to do is, as they learn about these media issues, as they see the importance of community and independent media, as they see this changing media landscape, as technology becomes so important to them, it's all about talking to your friends and neighbors. It's about talking about the dinner table. It's about making the media a bona fide political issue, so that all these candidates running for office, they've at least got to have a position. Maybe it won't be my position, but at least they're thinking about it, and they're not just rubber stamping whatever the companies send their way. And if they are, maybe they can actually be held accountable, and we can do something about that.
And then what about the last question? What about the idea of having people act with where they spend their money?
I definitely think where you can do that. So I guess I'll give you two quick answers to that question. So in terms of spending your money on the kind of media you want to see, that is absolutely something you need to do. If you're a big fan of what the UpTake's doing, give money to the UpTake. Same thing goes for community media, public radio. You need to support it with those dollars. That said, sometimes you don't have a choice. You want internet access, your only choice is the cable company or the phone company. You can't walk away. You can't use your feet to walk away. There's no other deal out there. That's going to be true for cell phones, all of these things. That's why we actually need public policy changes to create more competition, to lower prices, and to make it so that people can actually have those options to vote with their feet and actually get service in exchange for us handing over these public airwaves to these big companies.
Great. Thanks a lot for taking time to talk to us.